What is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about a hot topic that literally everyone has been asking me about, and it's what you should do when you feel like you're hitting a wall in this game. Now, I'm not going to lie, the content in this game does ramp up extremely high, especially in the hard difficulties for Inferno, and because of that, you might feel like you're hitting a wall, even when switching from something like Nightmare to Hell, or even something like Ember Trek, right? A lot of people get stuck in Ember Trek as well, like me currently, because the difficulty just ramps up kind of exponentially in the late game. So today I'm going to be telling you guys how you guys can actually break through this wall that you guys might be feeling, and just like what you guys need to do to make sure your team is at maximum power. Now the first thing you're going to have to do, and this is something that even a lot of late game players kind of forget to do because it's kind of like a secondary thought a lot of the time when you're building characters, because a lot of people just rush levels, is to get your prowess up. Now, if you guys didn't know, just by leveling your prowess, you get a ton of stats. So if I look at, for example, something like Beyontin, even though she's a support, you can actually upgrade her skills through the prowess, but that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at these nodes. So even if you don't lattice your characters, you want to make sure that you level this up as much as you can, even if you don't plan to spend the lattice. Even though it's annoying to farm the mats, because you can see it gives you a ton of stats. You get 10% defense and a lot of flat for free. You get the same for health as well, and you'll also get attack. Also with the prowess, when you're using SR characters, you're going to want to invest lattice in them for the most part, because SR characters use the purple lattice, which are a lot easier to obtain. This will make it so that your attacks will do way more damage for DPS, especially for this character Dieting. You definitely want to maxed out. And also for supports, you'll give them extra chances to land their debuffs. For example, Kazuyo gets a bigger chance to land her debuff for her attack and sleep. And you also get a skill cooldown. This is like the most important thing for supports. So you definitely want to make sure that you're utilizing your lattices and your prowess materials to upgrade your skills and your stats to make sure you get as many stats as possible. Alongside that, you're going to want to make sure your shell is completely up to date. And what I mean by this is don't have like a level 1 shell on, right? Don't just like look for one shell that you want to drop, like this Jackal Guard, for example, and just equip it. By leveling your shell, you get a ton of stats. You can see from the basic attributes, I'm getting 40 speed just from my shell. So you definitely want to make sure you're upgrading this as much as you can. Shells are a lot less punishing to upgrade because they give you 70% back if you decide to sell them later on. So even early game and mid game shells like purple shells and even yellow shells are worth it. Really good examples would be some that drop from this boss, the third boss. If you're looking for a good DPS shell, you can get this shell, Tamamo Dojo. It's very, very good. Even this one is very good, Budo Panda. And once you start getting to Fabian, you can start getting some really good mid-game shells in Black Flag for basically every support, and Twilight Knight for your DPSs. You can upgrade these even to level 40. That's what I did. I ended up selling them eventually, but into the mid and late game, these are very good, and you get a lot of rebate back on it. Definitely make sure you level them up. You also want to roll into some passives here. Don't go too crazy on the yellow ones because you will sell them eventually and stop using them. Just try to get something that you need. For example, like speed is good on my Kazuyo. I got effect resist, it's blue, and I got some tankiness for her as well. Just to make sure that you are utilizing the passive effects, because the passive effects can give you a ton of stats here. Even just from the first passive, you can get up to 30% attack, right? I think my Messiah has one like that. Might be my Dieting. 24% attack, right? So you can see like the stats you can get from this are pretty crazy. So you want to make sure you're upgrading your shells and even empowering them to higher star levels, because you unlock different passives. And similar to characters, by starring up your shells, you get a lot of stats from them. Also, let's talk about your levels. So a lot of people don't understand how levels work in this game. They think, oh, the higher level you are, the more stats you get, which is true. But the biggest stat upgrades are going to be when you star up characters. So if you're level 5, if you're 5-star, right, and you're level 1 compared to 5-star level 45, the stat difference is about like 5 to 10%, not even, I think, very, very low. But if you upgrade from 4-star to 5-star, you're going to get like 20%, 25% more base stats. I'm kind of just throwing these numbers out there, so I don't know if they're factually correct, but it definitely feels like something around that ballpark. So what I'm saying is you definitely want to star up your characters to at least 5 stars that you're using. So basically how you do that is just upgrade your character to max level and then star them up. For your supports, you can keep them at 5 stars because they can just do their job just by using their skills, and they don't get skill cooldown reduction outside of the prowess, right? They don't get really a lot of strength out of prowess. All you're really getting from starring up supports is speed and bulkiness, which is meh. But for your damage dealers, you definitely want to 6-star them. So in the early game, it's going to probably be your Dining. It's probably going to be your Messiah if you have him. If you have Romoka, if you have Giada, if you have Rosa, your Doki Doki DPS, it's going to be them. Even something like a Leanne, if you're completely free to play and you don't have any characters, is very good if I can find her. Very solid damage dealer. I think people underrate her. But just make sure that you 5-star your supports and get your main DPSs to 6 stars. You don't have to focus on levels too much. For example, you'll see a lot of my 5-star characters that I'm not like using all the time aren't even max leveled, and they're just very, very solid even at the low levels because your main stat increase comes from starring up. The next thing you're going to want to do is upgrade your modules. So if you look at endgame builds, everyone has these level 15 modules. However, you don't want to level 15 everything that you see, especially in the early to mid game. So you get a lot of starter gear from doing hyperlink charter and by doing, first time quests. And if we actually look at my right side pieces, my cores for example, you'll see I still have a lot of these purples and yellows. So what I recommend is upgrade the modules which you need the main stat for, especially like the cores, because the main stat varies on these. So if you have like a debuffer, effect accuracy ones are still going to be used into the late game until you can replace them. You can see I literally am still using them in Inferno on these yellow and purple pieces. For supports, HP is fine, and for damage dealers, anything with crit damage or crit chance is okay. The thing is, these modules, when you sell them, they only give 40% value back compared to shells. So I highly recommend, upgrading your shells first, and if you're struggling still, then you can go for upgrading your modules, but don't overdo it. You can keep them at like level 12, level 9. Every 3 levels, they get a substat upgrade, and they'll do their job. Biggest important thing about your modules is going to be making sure you have the matrix effect activated. At least one 12 matrix effect should be activated, ideally 12 and 8. And then eventually you're going to also want to upgrade the main stat of good pieces on the right side because these will boost your damage by a lot. Another tip I can give you is make sure you follow your hyperlink charter, right? A lot of people just try to progress through and get to Inferno as soon as they can. It's way better just to progress through hyperlink charter because one, you get a ton more stabilizers that you can use for more stability to actually farm more. You get a ton of materials to make it easier to upgrade your characters. If you are just spamming investigation for EXP, for these shadow prints, even, you can get a ton of these just by following your hyperlink charter. And even if you're like lacking lattices, you get a ton of purple lattices just by completing hyperlink charter. You can see like there's one here. If you go back even more, there's another one in the other like ones as well, and you get a ton of like shadow prints like I mentioned. You can see another lattice, you get a ton of summons, so you can catch up and try to pull more characters. So please make sure you're kind of following your hyperlink charter. Once you hit level 50, you might find like you can't complete it as much until you gear up, which is normal. But as soon as you can actually progress through it, or even before then, make sure you guys follow through with your hyperlink charter because it gives you a ton of lattices, most importantly, to upgrade your SRs. Now, the last thing I recommend is to actually copy team comps. Now, of course, you guys don't have every single unit in the game, but what you can do is actually look at team comps for reference and sub out the characters for characters that you have. For example, if you're looking at something like a Doki Doki clear and you see that for defense downs, for like Romoka comps, they have like a Kloss, what you can do is actually sub her out for a Gray. Also, if you see like a Lily, even though she's not as good as Lily, you can use like a Chiaki the Echo. And how you know you can sub them in is because of what they do. Lily has like a turn pushing, which is like very, very super like strong for her kit. Chiaki the Echo does like the same thing, but to a lesser extent, but it does ramp up over time, right? Kloss has like an AoE defense break with like a slow. Gray has an AoE defense break with a ton of damage and a crit buff. So you can kind of see that you can use replacements, even though you won't get like the best results with them. You can still clear endgame content with those. I think a lot of people get hung up on the fact that they are missing key units, and while yes, the key units are super strong and super broken and will make your account progress faster, it's better to try with the units that you have than just wait for the units that you pull for, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it for the tips I can give you for when you hit a wall. Pretty much just to summarize, make sure you prowess up your characters, get those extra stats. For SR characters especially, you want to make sure that you lattice up. And for damage dealers for your SSRs, it's good to lattice up as well. And also make sure you farm your shells. These give you the bulk of your stats. Make sure you also get your characters to 5-star at least with your DPS going to 6 stars, because 6 stars are the best for DPS because you'll get damage checked eventually. And also make sure to upgrade your modules, but don't go too overboard. Just aim to get your matrix effects going and the good main stats on your right pieces. And last but not least, make sure you copy team comps, right? There's a lot of team comps already out there now. We're not in the phase where people are like testing stuff too much. They still are, but not to the extent where everyone's kind of testing. If you're stuck even on like Anasync Echoes, for example, you can look at team comps here and just replace characters with what you have. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video though, guys. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys get through that wall soon. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. And if you guys have any questions, let me know down below.